New York City, NBC Studios, Studio 8. Saturday, April 8, 2000. 11:47.
13 minutes until Saturday Night Live goes live to 20 million viewers across America. The studio buzzes with controlled chaos. Cast members practice last-minute line changes. Crew members adjust lights and cameras. In dressing room 6, Christopher Walken sits quietly, reviewing his notes for a sketch that nobody expects to become legendary. The sketch is called More Cowbell, and it's scheduled to air in the show's second half. On paper, it seems throwaway. 5 minutes about a recording session for Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper, with Will Ferrell playing an enthusiastic cowbell player, and Walken as the producer who encourages him. Nobody in Studio 8H realizes they're about to create one of the most quoted comedy sketches in television history. Nobody knows that Christopher Walken, the intense, dramatic actor, famous for playing psychopaths and villains, is about to transform himself into an accidental comedy icon. But the real story begins 3 days earlier, in the writer's room, where Will Ferrell and Donald Campbell are brainstorming sketches for Christopher Walken's hosting gig. They face a challenge that has stumped comedy writers for decades. How do you make someone known for being terrifying, suddenly funny? What if we don't ask him to be funny, Will suggests. What if we put him in a ridiculous situation and let him play it completely straight? The idea is counterintuitive. Most comedy hosts try to show their range by being obviously humorous. But Will Ferrell understands something about comedy that most people miss. Sometimes the funniest thing is when someone doesn't realize they're being funny. Donnell Campbell mentions a piece of music trivia. The cowbell part in Don't Fear the Reaper was recorded by a session musician who insisted his contribution was essential to the song's success. What if Christopher Walken plays a producer who's obsessed with cowbell? He suggests. Someone who thinks it's the most important instrument in rock and roll? They write the sketch in 2 hours. It's simple, almost simplistic. A recording session where the cowbell player keeps asking for more cowbell and the producer keeps encouraging him. The band members think they're crazy, but Walken's character is absolutely convinced that cowbell is the secret ingredient that makes music magical. When the script reaches Christopher Walken's representative, he's talking about cowbell the way other actors talk about Hamlet. At 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes before air, Christopher Walken sits in his dressing room, but he's not preparing like other hosts. He's not running lines or practicing entrances. He's listening to Don't Fear the Reaper on headphones, eyes closed, completely focused. What are you doing? A production assistant asks. Hearing the cowbell, Walken replies without opening his eyes, understanding its place in the musical landscape. This is Christopher Walken treating a 5-minute comedy sketch like it's the most important performance of his career. 12:47 a.m. The sketch begins. Studio 8H transforms into a 1,970 seconds recording studio. Blue Oyster Cult, played by the Saturday Night Live cast, is recording their hit song. Will Ferrell enters with his cowbell, enthusiastic and slightly awkward. But when Christopher Walken appears as the producer, something magical happens. He doesn't just enter the scene, he commands it. His presence immediately elevates the entire sketch from silly comedy to something approaching theater. I got a fever, he says, and the way he delivers the line makes it sound like a medical diagnosis. And the only prescription is more cowbell. It's not just dialogue, it's a manifesto. Christopher Walken has turned this music producer into a man with a vision, a dreamer who sees possibilities where others see noise. When he encourages Will Ferrell to explore the space, he's not just talking about stage directions. He's talking about artistic expression. The live audience immediately understands they're witnessing something special. This isn't typical Saturday Night Live comedy. This is Christopher Walken transforming absurdity into art through pure commitment. 3 minutes into the sketch, Walken starts improvising. Not the dialogue, he sticks to the script, but his physical performance. He begins conducting the cowbell like he's leading a symphony orchestra. His hands move with the rhythm, guiding Will Ferrell's performance with the intensity of a master musician. More cowbell, he says, and his entire body communicates the desperate need for more percussion. The other cast members, playing the frustrated band, are supposed to look annoyed by all the cowbell talk. Instead, they're struggling not to break character because Christopher Walken's performance is so unexpectedly brilliant. Really explore the space, he tells Will Ferrell. And the way he says it suggests that cowbell isn't just an instrument, it's a philosophy of life. The sketch ends with Christopher Walken nodding approvingly as Will Ferrell plays his cowbell solo. The look on his face suggests he's just witnessed the creation of musical history. In his mind, this cowbell-obsessed producer has achieved something beautiful. The live audience erupts in applause, but it's not just polite Saturday Night Live applause. They know they've seen something extraordinary. Christopher Walken has elevated a silly sketch into something approaching performance art through sheer force of conviction. Backstage after the show, the cast and crew are buzzing with excitement. Everyone recognizes that More Cowbell was different. Christopher Walken transformed it beyond typical sketch comedy through pure commitment and unexpected depth. "I don't think I've ever seen someone take cowbell that seriously," Jimmy Fallon says. "I don't take cowbell seriously," Christopher Walken replies with that slight smile. "I take the character seriously. He takes cowbell seriously." But nobody involved in the production is prepared for what happens over the following weeks. More Cowbell becomes a cultural phenomenon before the infrastructure exists to support viral content. Before YouTube, before social media, before the internet systems that usually spread memes, the sketch spreads through pure word of mouth. People start quoting it at work. "I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell," becomes the answer to everything. The phrase appears on t-shirts, bumper stickers, coffee mugs. Late night talk show hosts reference it. Other TV shows parody it. Christopher Walken, accomplished dramatic actor and Oscar winner, suddenly becomes known for cowbell. The transformation is remarkable. Instead of being annoyed by his association with a comedy sketch, Walken embraces it. He understands that More Cowbell represents something important about his approach to acting. Total commitment to whatever role he's playing, no matter how ridiculous it might seem to others. "People enjoy it," he says in interviews. "It makes them happy." That's not a bad thing for an actor to achieve. Over the next 20 years, More Cowbell becomes one of the most referenced sketches in Saturday Night Live history. It spawns countless memes, parodies, and tributes. Music producers actually start adding more cowbell to songs as an inside joke. The phrase enters common usage as shorthand for any situation where someone thinks the solution is simply more of something. But the real impact goes beyond comedy. More Cowbell changes how people see Christopher Walken. Suddenly, the intense dramatic actor is also capable of brilliant comedy. It opens doors to roles he never would have been considered for before. Directors start writing comedy parts specifically for him, knowing that his ability to play absurd situations with complete seriousness creates a unique kind of humor. In 2010, 10 years after the sketch aired, Christopher Walken appears on Saturday Night Live again as a guest. During his opening monologue, the audience starts chanting, "More cowbell, more cowbell." Instead of being irritated, Walken smiles. "You know," he says, "I actually do have a fever, and you know what I need." The audience screams the response, "More cowbell." "That's right," Walken says. "But tonight, let's explore some other spaces too." It's perfect. 20 years later, Christopher Walken is still committed to the bit, still finding new ways to make people smile through pure dedication to whatever character he's playing. The lesson of More Cowbell is simple but profound. Commitment transforms everything. Take anything seriously enough and it becomes art. Believe in your character completely and audiences will believe too. Christopher Walken didn't set out to become a meme. He just approached a silly sketch with the same intensity he brought to his Oscar-winning dramatic roles. And in doing so, he accidentally created something that brings joy to millions of people every day. That's the power of pure commitment. That's what happens when an artist treats every performance, no matter how small, like it matters. Christopher Walken didn't get more cowbell. He became More Cowbell. And 5 minutes later, the phrase More Cowbell entered the cultural lexicon forever. Not through calculation or marketing, but through the simple act of an actor believing completely in the importance of percussion instruments. Sometimes the most lasting art comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes a 5-minute sketch about cowbell becomes more culturally significant than films that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what happened when Will Ferrell said, "I got a fever," and Christopher Walken made cowbell into a philosophy of life. 5 minutes of television that proved commitment is more important than context. and that the highest form of comedy comes from playing ridiculous situations with absolute seriousness. More cowbell, indeed.